Welcome to Zen and the Art of Emergency Management, where we embrace the philosophy to treat everything that happens as the best thing that could happen. In emergency management, really? Yes, because when we do, we move beyond wishing for the world that we want and we deal with the world that we have, and then we can move forward in a positive and creative manner. Welcome to episode 3 of Zen and the Art of Emergency Management, a show about finding calm, clarity, and collaboration in chaotic times. One of the concepts is that we learn to give full attention to what's often overlooked. In emergency management, that means rural towns, tribal lands, and under-resourced places. And I am very happy today to be talking with Dave Fogerson, former Chief of Emergency Management and Homeland Security for the state of Nevada. And full disclosure, I've worked with him for several years, and I'm excited to have him here because he's one of the people that I think gets it, right? That balance of federal, local, state level. Dave, please introduce yourself and, give us, a little bit of insight. You jumped in the seat a few years ago at the head of the state and what you saw, what you were looking at, and what you were thinking.
Awesome. Thanks for having me here, Randy. I really appreciate it. It's cool to be one of your first people to be on your new adventures with you. So like you said, my name's Dave Fogerson. I started as a firefighter, actually as a explorer, and have progressed through the ranks and spent 27 years in the fire service. And my last assignment was a deputy fire chief for training, safety, operations, and emergency management. And it was right in the middle of COVID, 2020. And we are testing. We don't have a vaccine yet. And I've got my time in that I could retire. And then two friends of mine, or people that I think were my friends, talked me into becoming the state emergency manager. Told me I couldn't leave in the middle of the pandemic. And so they moved me into the role of the state emergency manager, Homeland Security chief in October 2020. And if we remember back to that time, again, we were testing at Operation Warp Speed, trying to get us a vaccine. We had elections coming up. We all had some writing activity that summer. It was just odd times. And it was a really odd time to take over the organization, but it allowed me to do some things that I don't think I would have been able to do. In fact, I know I wouldn't be able to do at any other time. I was able to harness some of that chaos to move the organization forward some. At the local level, you're used to always having to do the work. And the state level, you're supposed to be that supporting agency to help those locals and ensure that they've got the resources they need. And in Nevada, the DM was mostly a grant obligating organization and not very much of a response or supporting local organization. And so I was able to use that, the chaos of all those things going on at once to make some changes there. And some of the big things that I think we can talk about here is remembering your role, who you are in what place, at what time, what you're supposed to be doing. Remembering that relationships matter. I was blessed from being an emergency manager in the state for quite a few years that then when I became a state emergency manager, I knew the majority of the players. My role had changed, and so then I had to prove to people that I was going to take on the new role, but I didn't have to meet people. Nevada's a very large state, but very small numbers. And so there's 16 county emergency managers, a state emergency manager, and a half dozen cities that have emergency managers. And then a few of our tribal nations have some emergency managers as well. But I knew those folks from working with them through the years. So I think that also helped me to become more pragmatic to fix some things during that chaos. And the big thing that we did was emergency operations centers open for COVID. And so we used whiteboards on the outside of the emergency operations center to write down what we thought our values would be. Okay. And what we wanted to do for our goals. And so people, when they're stressed in the EOC, were able to come out and on their way to the bathroom, on their way to breaks, they could see where we're headed. And I was able to get, using Collins's book, Good to Great, get the right people on the bus in the right seats and get some people off the bus that shouldn't be there.
Okay.
And we really focus on that stewardship role model, that I'm not here for me, I'm here for us, and we're here for them. And that kind of became our mantra, especially through those dark COVID days of the vaccines and then additional riots, the elections, and all that goodness that all rolled up in that time period. But again, I think it was that disharmony that the world had that allowed me to step up and put some things together that would not have been able to be done at any other time in history for that organization.
Right. So I love it. Lesson one there, Rahm Emanuel, right? Never let a crisis go to waste. Right.
Yeah.
And for those who haven't heard the whole thing, remember the other part of it is exactly what Dave talked about. Was there's times in crisis that you can do the things that you couldn't otherwise. It's not a tongue-in-cheek thing at all. And so your story there about the whiteboard is exactly my impression of you over the years in your inclusiveness. I mean, right? How simple and how brilliant that is in a time of great stress and everything, to let people do that and put that up there and go, let me add to it, and also be reminded of what we're doing, because it was a slog. I mean, coming out of that across the nation, everybody I worked with was exhausted at all levels. But I want to pull one thread you talked about. So, right, you were at kind of local level, and then suddenly went to the state level. You knew everybody. Was it open, welcome arms? Everyone's like, hey, great. Or was there some friction with some folks who goes, that should be me?
I don't think anybody wanted that job, but especially during that time, nobody really wanted that job. But I think just through our histories of working with people, there probably was some animosity over it, especially because in Nevada, one of my first tasks from the Adjutant General was to make Southern Nevada, which is really Clark County, know the state exists, because there's a north-south divide. And so the only way you can do that is get on old paint and ride. And so I think I changed some people's opinions, and because I was in the South as much as I was in the North, as in Eastern Nevada as much as I was in Western Nevada. And building those relationships is, I think, what helped us all get through that slog of COVID, because we knew each other, and changing some of those images that people maybe had seen of me. Because, when you're a fire chief, you rule with a different ability than when you're the emergency manager. Yeah. When you're the fire chief, you got organizational rank and structure that you can use to your benefit, and people will follow your instructions and orders. When you're the emergency manager, you got to convince people that they want to do the same thing you want to do.
I totally get that. That was a major cultural shift that I had when I joined FEMA. I'd been in command control in the Air Force, war, and things like that. I'd been a plant manager, all these things, right? In the military, it's command and control. And all of a sudden, it's pretty please. Like, whoa, what? Everybody just doesn't do what I say? Like right now? No. Yeah. And
absolutely.
So that is, yeah. So that's a tiger by the tail. That's a great piece of advice for state level emergency managers everywhere. For those who aren't familiar with the grant system in Homeland Security grants, the large urban areas often have more money, maybe 2 times, maybe multiple times more than the state does from that same process. So with that comes resources, and with that, let's face it, comes power. And so it's, like I said, I guess it's right. So what'd you say? Get on the paint.
Just get on down paint there and ride.
Yeah. And
you got to get on that horse, and you got to go see everybody. I probably spent more time on a road than I did in my office for the first 2 years, trying to build that relationship that the state is here to help you, not to hurt you.
Right.
Although we're going to hurt you a couple of times. We're going to hurt you sometime, but hopefully the relationship of the times we've helped you overweighs the times when we do something that does hurt you.
And, Nevada isn't unique in that a lot of states have couple large population centers and a lot of rural areas. But I don't know I know anywhere that's more extreme, right? We've got Las Vegas and Clark County, I think like 2.3 million people or something. And the county next door is 4,000.
Yes.
And so that is a cliff that you're going off of as you're trying to balance and work with them.
And we got one county, as Brawley County, there's 454 people that live in that community. And they don't have a building code because they don't have a building inspector, because they don't build anything. And so when FEMA came out with the rule that everybody had to have a building code, I'm like, I can't go make these people hire a building inspector and enforce a code. There's only 454 people there. Their public works department, their operating budget for the year was $10,000.
Right. So that's a part-time, little bit pay to go out there and check it out. Right. Yeah. And it's funny, but I know they showed up at your workshops. You had your preparedness workshops. And so that's something I thought was very powerful that I don't think I've seen done anywhere else to such a level. It's one thing I admired about your connection with the the urban areas, with the tribal nations, and the rural communities, getting everybody to the table and being heard.
Absolutely. And John backed all my deputy was to, hey, why don't we do what you're doing for these tours, and why don't we take the office with us? And then we can go and have these regional workshops where we get everyone together. We can talk the good, the bad, and the ugly. We can do our thyra and put a pencil in our eye because, all the thyra questions that everyone always loves to try to answer.
Right.
And work through that process. And it was wonderful. They're still doing it today. In fact, now they even have a dinner night to invite everyone out to dinner. So that way we can break bread around the table and build those relationships even stronger.
Yeah, and I think that's so powerful. Even though Nevada might not be the most populous state, it's a long ways to go, right? Even when we do regional things, people are driving a couple hours to get to that workshop. And right, so to bring your staff out, and now that person is no longer this evil person or whatever behind the curtain, that you get email from. They're right here, and I can talk to them. And I know when I found typically when that happens, it's more efficient too. Oh my gosh, instead of 10 emails and over months at a time, I can sit down with you and we can hash this out right away.
Absolutely. You can be mad at them. You can't be mad at Randy because you know Randy. So you can pick up a phone, call Randy, and he's going to come see you. And that was another thing we did was we had 2 employees in Las Vegas, but they were doing state work. They weren't helping the local government out. And we didn't have any grant folks there. So now imagine you're looking at a grant Excel spreadsheet and you're on a telephone call with somebody else looking at a grant Excel spreadsheet instead of both sitting in the same room looking at the same screen trying to figure out how to fix it. And so by embedding some grant employees in Southern Nevada also helped build those relationships down there to solve some of those easier problems quicker.
Right. And so that is just, one of I guess the great things I'm going to do is deep listing, no agenda, just present, and be there and go with that. Again, I think your staff really picked up on that, on your leadership style there. Like you say, I'm here to help. And you can go ahead and bash me for a little bit. You can, I used to get that at FEMA. I'm like, okay, I get it. That's my role, but it's okay. We are really here to help you and move all along.
Our friends in Elko, they made the statement, must be present to win. If you're not present, you can't win. And when I left, they were just now getting a state employee out there to help support those rural communities out in Eastern Nevada through their emergency management process to build those relationships even stronger.
Yeah. And it's so important. It's all a relative size. So I have an urban area. It's big numbers. But I remember at a workshop, and someone said, I think there was at a 4-way stop, a traffic accident with fatalities and injuries, like 60 miles off of the Highway 80. And it's an hour and a half to get services that are back in that. So looking after the folks out in the rural areas is extremely important. How do we continue to support them? And like you say, get someone out there.
Absolutely. And you look at larger communities have a tax base and you get better services in those communities. And people are fairly reliant upon those governmental services. Those rural and frontier, because not only do we have the urban population areas, we got suburban, we got rural, and then we have frontier, which actually has a definition of it's like less than 15 people per square mile or something. Right. But we have communities in Nevada that are still frontier-based communities. Those people don't rely upon the government for help. But they also don't have the money to raise on the tax base at 480 people to provide those services. So it's about trying to do equal equity throughout the state. So that way every Nevadan gets the same level of service no matter where you live. But that in those rural and frontier areas, they're going to probably be taking care of themselves. And when they call, it's almost like when the rancher shows up at the emergency room. That rancher is sick when he shows up to that emergency room.
Right. You may only see them once every 3 years, but if they show up, it's important. The needle you threaded so well was, sharing those priorities. I'm not sure that other states do it as well as you. I think you're about the best I've seen at bringing those all together. So first of all, you get down there, get on the road, get out there, get your team out there, get a full-time staff member out there. Any other thoughts before we leave that thread on to others? You might say, it'd be sitting in your seat and go, how do I do this?
I think the other advantage part is knowing each other. A lot of us grew up together because we were all dual-hatted firefighters and emergency managers, or law enforcement and emergency managers. And so being that you've known somebody for 20 years and you're a known commodity. I think that also helps. And you got to love the state. You gotta
Yes.
love that sagebrush. You gotta love those juniper trees. You gotta love the pinions. And I think that wears off on people to show that you are a Nevadan. You're out here. You care for us.
Yeah. And so, right. And so what you're talking about is, of course, has been in the news for months now. There's lots of things. I'm not going to speculate where anything's going. It was like, oh, right. Let the locals handle it. I let the private sector handle it. And locals, as you talked about, I've spent a lot of time with tribal nations. And frankly, many of my clients are county, local, rural. And right, they can't just dial up the tax base and go, we're just going to go a half-cent tax or 1 cent tax, or we'll do a bond. That's just not going anywhere. Right.
Brawley County, I believe that their annual budget for the entire county is $3 million for a county budget. I mean, that's less than what we get for preparedness or Homeland Security funding statewide.
I go, I don't know, it's like 100 feet of road. I don't know if it gets torn up or something like that. Right, once you start losing the road. And so that was the other thing too, right? You hear about like, well, let others handle like private sector. And I go, well, okay, let me put my hat on. Yeah, I could step into it. I could hire somebody in to do this maybe at some price. But what you said is exactly right. I got to love the state. I got to have something vested there.
And we used to make a joke because we had a lot of FEMA employees working out of the State Emergency Operations Center during COVID and then Hurricane Hillary. So I'd always stop them at the front door. Tell me how you say the name of our state. And if they couldn't say Nevada, they got sent back to their car. Go back to your car, phone a friend, and figure out how to say the name of your state before you get to come into my office.
Yeah, don't get no Nevada.
Nope. And it became known after about a month of doing that, people would walk up, sir, I'm here for the state pronunciation test. And it wore off on them that we care.
Yeah. I get that. So I was up in Maine and they go, where'd you fly into? I go, Bangor. And they're like, Bangor? I go, oh, yes. So, there's something to be said for that, right? If you want to connect with people and really work with them, take a little bit of time and listen and go, okay, I'm with you. What are you doing? What's coming up in your life? Where are you headed now? You're out of this job, but you are not slowing down. I see you all over my LinkedIn and things like that.
Absolutely. I got a couple of irons in the fire. I got a consulting company that I'm doing to try to help out friends that need some help, and also working part-time at a critical access hospital because I found that consulting, most of the time I'm sitting behind a computer screen and doing these kinds of things. And I really miss that interaction with people. So I called our community hospital and said, hey, can I work here 20 hours a week? I just need to see people. And so I'm the emergency manager for our critical access hospital. And then I'm also running for the International Association of Emergency Managers Region 9 presidency to see what I can do since I got some extra time in my hands to improve some communications and make some stability in these times of crisis that everyone sees with the funding cliffs.
I mean, I think you'd be dynamite being dialed into that, urban, rural kind of base. I laughed. I've lived in the San Francisco Bay Area for a long time, and there's a bubble there, and our friends are like, oh, those people out, in the South or wherever where I live now. And I'm like, dude, have you ever driven 2 counties out of the Bay Area? Going through Central California, or you go to Northern California and you start seeing the state of Jefferson, and even, and National Public Radio is like state of Jefferson radio. I go, it varies so widely. Good luck because I think you're the right person that knows how to bring all those strings together.
Yeah, when you have to stop and get a new tank of fuel in your car when you're going to an incident in your own district, that says a lot about the size of our state.
It does. My son joined me at a workshop in Elko. I flew into Reno. He started in Santa Cruz, California. He drove 4 hours. He drove 4 hours in. The rental car was on his name, so he stayed in the driver's seat. We get on the highway. He goes, "How much farther?" I'm like, "Another 4 hours." He's like, "Are you serious?" I'm like, "Yeah, it is." And you're only passing like 3 counties or something at that time too. We have 100 counties in North Carolina, so it's bam, 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 bam.
Yep.
Now I'm intrigued about. So you're at a hospital as their emergency manager. That is awesome. I mean, I'm sure they know how lucky they are, right? We just got this wealth of experience as dropped into our lap. So glad you're doing that. All right. Well, it's been a pleasure talking. Any final thoughts, comments?
No, just we all got to be thinking about the future and what's going to happen, what could happen. And we're emergency managers. We should be prepared, and we shouldn't be surprised when funding changes or we see more disasters or we see something different. And we can't just be running around chickens with their heads cut off trying to raise a ruckus. We need to be organized and thoughtful with our communications because people look at us to lead the way.
That's a great note to leave on, because out on the LinkedIn and whatnot, I see emergency managers now. There's lots of commentary, which is kind of why I wanted to do this effort. So thanks for noting that. Right. Stick with your business,
Yes.
embrace the unknown and work with it, because all things will change.
Absolutely.
All right. Thanks much. And I'm sure we'll be seeing you around.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Randy.
All right. Bye now.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Zen and the Art of Emergency Management. Please subscribe to our channel, leave comments, and of course, let me know if you would like to be interviewed. See you next time.